So thanks everyone for joining. Looking forward to delivering this webinar today with Natalia. My name's Troy Nicholson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and the co-founder of Satori. And I'm here with Natalia Levankova, who's our GM of Customer Success. Good morning, Natalia.
Good morning,
How are you?
Troy.
And good afternoon, everyone, for some of our New Zealand guests that have joined us today. Good afternoon to them as well. So, as with most webinars you've probably attended, there is a Q&A function. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to use the Zoom Q&A feature. Enter your question in there, and then we'll definitely get to those questions at the end of the webinar. Probably 5 or 10 minutes to answer any questions you might have. There'll also be a couple of polls throughout the session, so please feel free to participate. I'd love to get your feedback. So just some background on Satori's Procure-to-Pay experience. This is a handful of our customers we've got listed up there. So we work with all levels of government, federal, state, local. In fact, around 45%, maybe a bit more, of our customer base is government. And also in the private sector, we're heavily represented in ASX listed companies, large organisations through mining, also construction, and manufacturing. So one thing these companies all have in common is they all buy things and they all have a procurement function, and we're able to add a lot of value to helping them prevent and detect errors and frauds. So for today's session, I've done some research and I've picked on the PwC survey I did back in 2024 on crime and fraud around the P2P process. And what surprised me is that a fifth of organisations in Australia have experienced a fraud in procurement. So that's quite high, I thought. And and that's only in the last 2 years. Also, what was surprising to me is that procurement fraud's in one of the top 3 risks. So that was also surprising to me. And it's up there with cybercrime and corruption. And also, almost $4 or $3.50 to $4 is lost for every dollar that goes out the door for a fraud. So was quite staggering. So if you consider there was a fraud recently for Transport for New South Wales, I believe the fraudulent spend was around 350 million. I think it's $11.5 million in kickbacks on that case is before the ICAC at the moment. So when you add that up, potentially could end up to be, in the hundreds of millions of dollars value of fraud by the time they take it through the courts and prosecute. One other big fraud that's still on the radar and quite heavily presented in the news is around payment redirection. So that's simply what typically happens there is one of your suppliers gets hacked through their emails, and they somehow convince yourselves or a company, the company they're supplying, to update or change bank account details. So the government's cracking down or trying to help businesses reduce this number of these frauds. In this last year, there was over $150 million lost through this particular fraud, and it's actually gone up over 60% from the previous period, which is quite alarming. Just recently, just to make you aware, some of you may be aware that in Queensland there was a council that was stung for over $2.3 million through one of these frauds. So it was a deep fake hack that managed to get through their controls and get a bank account changed, and $2.3 million went out the door. I do believe they managed to recover $400,000 of that money. That's looking at around a $1 million fraud. So it is still happening out there, and the Shire Council is still a fairly large business, so it does happen. So, as I mentioned, the federal government through the ACCC have set up a task force or an anti-scam centre to help measure and facilitate the better control around and awareness around these types of fraud. The banks they've been dragging the banks through into this process as well, and getting them to carry the can a lot more to try and reduce these these frauds. And what they've done, the banks have done, is got together and agreed to share all their bank data. So it went live in September this year, Confirmation of Payee, which essentially is a database of all Australian bank accounts, including username, account name, BSB, and account number. And that's all centrally maintained and curated through Australian Payments Plus, which is a not-for-profit arm that's actually owned by the banks, and they facilitate this data. They also provide products like BPay and EFTPOS. So you may have heard of Australian Payments Plus. And we're really excited to announce that we're one of the first organisations outside of the banks to ingest this data. So now our product OK to Pay has an API into the Confirmation of Payee data. So our customers are able to electronically verify any bank account that they're about to transact with. So that leads us to our first poll. So I've got, I'll just bring the poll up there. It's not working. Intended. Okay, sorry about that. So first one is, what is the risk of payment redirection fraud at your organisation? So just give everyone 30 seconds or so to answer that one. The results coming in now. Interesting. Okay, great. I might end it there and share the results. So, so quite surprising that there's still a large chunk medium. Is that what you're thinking? I guess people are sitting on the fence there.
Yeah, I expected high percentage of answers.
So, so I think maybe the mediums are sitting on the fence. It's one of those things where a lot of organisations have manual processes in place still. So there is still that chance that even though you do have something in place, that it's not being followed. So thanks everyone for responding to that. Okay, Natalia, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Troy. So I will, as always, present some real-life case studies and some examples from our solutions across our customers. But I thought maybe I will take a few minutes and just walk you through our product, just to remind you how we are trying to help our customers to prevent this kind of fraudulent activities happening. So I will start with our Verify solution. So basically what we do to be able to identify some red flags through the data and highlight some potential issues to our customers. What we do, we integrate with our customers' systems, various systems. So we work with SAP, Oracle, and any other systems that exist. And we extract data on a regular basis. So normally it's once or multiple times a day. And we process all the data we receive in our analytics engine, where we have very extensive library of tests. And I will show some examples of various tests or analytics we run to pick up on potential red flags or suspicious activity. And all these issues that we are finding, we put through our case management workflow for the users to investigate and close with relevant resolution outcomes. So they capture what the issue is, how they actioned it, and what was the root cause, and whether it was a suspicious activity or not. And then the summary of all the findings will be reported on the dashboard to the executive management. So now I will walk you through a few case studies. So when we pick up various inconsistencies or issues within the data, normally those are not actual fraud or abuse. They're rather red flags when people doing something wrong or trying to explore if there are any loopholes within the system. So one of typical scenarios, and I will use a scenario where we have an external fraudster trying to find a way to defraud a company. So what they typically do, they send a fake invoice with fraudulent bank account. And being an external fraudster, they might not be privy to the way how the invoices are processed, and they are not aware what the correct invoice details they should put on the fake invoice. So these kind of scenarios can be picked up through the invoices out of sequence. So in my example here, you can see that we are looking at the patterns in the invoice numbers. So here we are looking at a particular invoice that was processed the day after two other invoices were processed. And we can see that the current invoice number for the new invoice is completely out of sequence. It doesn't look like the normal pattern for those invoices. And even when we look at the amount, we can see that the amount is very, very different. So normally it's around $1,000, and here this invoice is huge. So in this particular case, it was a capture error. So obviously it was a wrong invoice processed. And that's how we can pick up potential fraudulent invoices where the invoice number is completely incorrect and other details also not matching a normal pattern. Another example would be around internal fraud. When internal fraudster creates a fake vendor within an ERP using a real ABN number. The case that we observed in the past, that it was an actual red flag that the ABN was not registered for GST. However, the fraudulent invoices that the internal fraudster tried to process actually had a GST on that, and further investigation showed that there was a bigger fraud going on within the company. And here I have an example where we have the GST status of the vendor as non-registered for GST, but however, we can see that there was a GST amount on the invoice number, and the outcome of the investigation was that the vendor was disabled, and unfortunately GST wasn't recovered by this particular customer. Another case study would be again around the internal fraud, and that's something what we can see from time to time across our customers, where internal the employees process reimbursement claim using receipt from corporate credit card transactions. So they buy something using a corporate credit card, and then they claim using the receipt to claim this expense again through the expense through accounts payable, for example. So we run tests to identify potential duplication across accounts payable and credit card transactions to pick up these cases. And I have an example here when it was a policy breach because the employee tried to do exactly that, and the outcome was that the employee and the manager were cancelled, and the invoice that was a duplicate to the credit card transaction was cancelled. Now I will talk a little bit more about our other product, the K2Pay, that Troy mentioned before. This is basically a platform that allows our customers to verify bank accounts and record all the steps of the bank account verification within the system. So how it works, the first step is to do electronic bank check. That's the integration with Confirmation of Payee that Troy mentioned before. So what we do here, we use Confirmation of Payee information to match the account name, the bank account name, to the registered name that is recorded in the Confirmation of Payee database. So in many cases, in most of the cases, that will be a sufficient check, and this bank account can be added to the system as verified. But however, if you want to do further checks, the platform allows you to then go ahead and conduct payee identity checks. For the companies, we would use the ABN, and we verify some other company details for that, confirm it with the payee. With the individuals, we confirm it using the mobile number via one-time password. And we can ask them to verify some key information. For example, ask them to enter last 3 digits of their driver license number or passport or whatever identification you would like to use. You can go even further in your checks. If you would like to do further verification, you can request through the platform, you can request payee bank statements. It can be done by manual upload or through open banking. So that is very, it is a very simple process for the payee. And if you would like to go further and do some other checks, you can also proceed with the manual verification and request more information from the payee and follows a checklist to complete all those checks. And after that, you can accept or reject the payee or the bank account to be added to the system. So it can be, so you can complete one or more of these checks depending on the risk of the payment. And an additional functionality there is to also verify your ABA file to make sure that only approved payees, only approved payee bank accounts sitting within your ABA file. So one of the examples that we had before with one of our customers within K2Pay, when the external fraudster compromised the business email of the existing vendor, and they sent fake invoice with fraudulent bank accounts that didn't belong to the actual vendor. So it was picked up through our system and it was rejected. And the actual invoice was for almost $50,000. So that's something what could have been paid. So that's all from me, and I think we can run the next poll now.
So has your organisation implemented controls monitoring to prevent payment redirection fraud? So I'll just put so it's yes, we have real-time oversight. Partially, we have controls in place but mostly manual. No, we currently don't have monitoring process in place. So. Okay, just give it another 10 seconds or so, just a few more results coming through. Okay. So Natalia.
Yeah, it's nice to see that everyone has something in place.
So still quite a lot of the audience still yes, it's almost 3/4 of the audience still have manual processes, which is an opportunity, I guess, for us to come and talk to you. But yeah, thanks for that. We'll continue on.
Okay.
Okay, so just some takeaways before we wrap up. So based on what we see in the market and what our customers, what results they do see coming through, that we do stop, and based on the survey I gave some top headliners today about the percentage, a fifth of organisations have had a fraud in the past 2 years. It's more than likely happening in most organisations. There's some type of P2P fraud happening right now, whether it's around invoicing, whether it's around things like maybe it's abuse, maybe it's people doing split purchases, getting under delegation limits. Someone's probably could have a password and they're approving, they're requesting and approving their own expenses. Could be a number of things could go wrong, and the reason for it is that most large organisations, or all large organisations, are very complex and have a lot of systems and moving parts, and rely a lot heavily on manual processes. So it's becoming more and more apparent through the work we're doing that, and the issue's still there, the risk is still there, that you can no longer rely on IT controls, and you really need to automate the checking rather than having manual workarounds. So the fraudsters are always finding a new way to get into your organisation, and even people, unfortunately, within your organisation are working out ways to defraud the company. And the organisations, these days really need to adopt a data-driven approach and stay ahead of the game in terms of fraud in their organisation. So that ends I've got a few questions here just to so one question, where do you recommend we start? The bank account verification or the accounts payable procedure piece?
I
could probably answer that one. So for that one, so OK to Pay is very quick to get up and running. Simply, you just let us know that you want to sign up to the platform, and we email you a login and username, and away you go. There's no need to necessarily import data into the system. It's a standalone system, and you can get up and running immediately. So I think probably recommend, if you're concerned about payment redirection fraud, that's something you could get going with tomorrow. In terms of accounts payable, it's a little bit more involved. So for that, the verified product, it's about us working with your IT department to get the data. That data is then fed to us on a daily basis through securely on a daily basis. And typically the projects take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the resources available, typically inside your organisation. So it takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort to get going on the accounts payable, but definitely see a big return on investment around AP. So we did some analysis recently, and on average, this is an average across all of our customers, we're saving them $5 million a year around leakage and error in their accounts payable processes. So it's big return, and OK to Pay is really covering your butt. So OK to Pay is, a lot of you mentioned there the manual processes. You're relying on people in the team to make a phone call or get a bank, read it, make sure they check a bank statement. But the challenge there is you probably don't have any oversight in terms of the process. So OK to Pay provides an audit trail and logs, so you can see for yourself exactly recorded, was the payee contacted, what check did you do, what was the result of the check, and so forth. So really important for butt covering. So the question is, how do you apply these checks if it's an overseas supplier and they don't have an ABN?
For the overseas suppliers, it depends on the country. There are also APIs similar to what we use here in Australia to check the ABNs in real time when we connect to the API and get the response, whether it's registered company and whether it's registered for GST and so on and so forth. We have similar integration in other countries, like for example, New Zealand, the UK, they have also very nice API where we can do some checks. But yeah, it really depends on the country.
Thanks, Natalia. And another one, how quickly can these anti-fraud products be set up? So I think I've already answered that one. Those two questions are very, very similar, so I won't go through that one again. But that's all the questions I have today. 3 questions. Thank you for that. And that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you everyone for joining. And the webinar recording will be made available in due course. And also every webinar we develop a blog, and that blog will be made available in probably the next week or 2. So if you want to share share that with other people in the organisation, feel free to. Thank you, Natalia,
Thank
for your
you.
input.
Thanks, Troy.
And thanks
Thanks,
everyone for
everyone.
joining.